Welcome to Love Is. This is a first of hopefully many different interviews that we'll be doing with just different people, different couples that have gone through life together and can share their experiences and just what they've been through. And our first couple is Pastor Josh and Pastor Tori. They have a lot to share, and we're just excited to hear about it. And before we do, we want to do like just a quick little video background of who they are for those of you that met them for the first time.
Pastors Josh and Tori have been married for 23 years.
Wow, so long.
They both serve at Life Church and have been pastors there since 2016. They have 4 beautiful children.
Best family ever.
Pastors Josh and Tori have a happy marriage and an interesting love story that starts way back in their childhood, but we will leave that to them to tell us how it all started.
So we would like to know your love story.
Yeah. Oh, that's it? Yeah. We're getting rich there. Check. I guess we can do one more round of applause for.
This feels like it's not very loud. Caleb, can you turn this one up just a little bit? The handheld one. Check 1, 2. I think it's better.
Yeah.
All right. You want to start?
Well, do they want the real story or?
No, they want my story.
Oh, you go ahead. Tell yours first. And then you tell yours first, and then I'll make the correction.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. Okay, so hi, I'm Tori. This is Josh. We have, as you saw maybe in the pictures, that was actually not the very first picture of us together. We have one before that even with my mom holding.
The last picture you noticed,
Those babies.
so the 2 little boys was my older brother, me, and then Tori was there too.
Yeah.
So those
But there's one even before that where my mom is holding Josh and 6 months pregnant with me. So we have an interesting story because Dennis kept asking me, I think you asked me 3 times, so when did you guys meet? And I keep telling him, I don't know if you want like an age or like a place, but literally known them my whole entire life. So we grew up together, actually here at this church. We went to their school, did all the things, we were friends. And then, well, before I ever looked at him in a different way because he was a head shorter than me most of my life until you hit about 18. And then we decided to start dating. And it was an interesting story because we were hanging around each other a whole lot, doing lots of, just hanging around, and nothing was official at all. And I was at SLU, I was a student at SLU, and one day we went to a wedding together, not together, we were both there, and a girl, her name was Shekinah, I'll never forget it. She's like, so how are things? Like, how is school? And I was telling her all about how great everything was going, and he had been out of town that weekend. So I'm standing there talking to Shekinah, and I told her, I went on this date with this guy last night, oh my gosh, like it was so good, and all this stuff. I didn't know that he was behind me. It wasn't him. And so we went the rest of the night. It was kind of quiet. Then we all went bowling together afterwards. And after everyone left, I went to get my car, completely oblivious, just like, whatever, man, my life is so good, And he gets in the car and slams the door and he says, what is going on? After the whole night. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, how dare you go on a date with a guy like we're dating? And I said, that's so funny that you never asked. So I didn't really know that's what was happening. But after that was that. And we have lots of versions of the story because he would say it one way. His dad feels very responsible for making this happen because there was a moment where he said, hey, if you like this girl, you need to just go for it. And he holds all the weight and responsibility for that, right? He had nothing to do with it. I think that really it's because I went on a date with somebody else. That's not my advice to you tonight. We'll get a little, don't, if you like somebody or you're interested, don't just, go on a date with somebody else, but it did work for me, 23 years in. And so, yeah, we fell in love and, got married very young, which is also something that I wouldn't across the board always recommend. I think it's very specific to who you are and what God has for you. So it's been a beautiful and hard and very growing journey of finding out what love is, which we have lots more questions to ask and answer tonight. So do you have more things to say?
Yeah, we want to hear it from Pastor Josh's perspective as well. I mean,
my perspective is very, very similar to Pastor Tori's, but I just wanted to say, we were hanging out a lot, and we're kind of dating, but just make sure you ask, okay? Because I didn't specifically say,
so you
hey.
you made the assumption that this
Just assume.
okay, this is what's going on.
Just make sure, you actually talk. And that's a big thing about relationships too. I'm sure we'll say more, is the communication is a huge aspect of relationships. So make sure you ask.
That's first really good advice. Make sure you actually are dating.
Don't just assume it's what's happening.
So I guess that kind of answers, well, in a way. So who made the first step then was that in the back of in the car where he said, "What are you doing?"
I mean, I would say I made the first step by going on that date, but he would say for sure he did, right? Wouldn't you say that?
Sure.
Yeah, he slammed that door so hard. For sure it was him. Yes, I would say Josh.
And so did you, at that moment, were you like, oh yeah, that's right?
Was I? Oh yeah, I was like, yeah, I've been waiting for this.
Okay,
if I had known.
Then you wouldn't have went on the date with the other person.
Right.
But you felt the contrast.
I told him just the other day, he should probably send that guy a thank you note for all that he did for us. Did I not just tell you that? He brought us together, babe.
You went on a date because you want to make me jealous? Is that what you just said? Okay.
It worked. It worked.
It did work, whatever the reason was.
So when you both, I guess at that moment when you became officially dating, did you have any doubts throughout, maybe even before it was official or during its officiality?
Doubts in general?
Yeah, because I think anyone that is looking to be in a relationship or is in a relationship, there's always that I guess feeling. I know this is going to sound weird, but am I missing out on someone better, or is this really from God, or whatever the thoughts that are racing through your head.
Yeah. Well, first of all, to that, you mentioned that one statement about am I missing something better? I would say that thought never has to be in your mind, because that's not a factor in the relationship that you're trying to be in right now. That's just non-existent, and really focusing on, is this the person that I want to be with, to date, or even beyond that, to pursue marriage, and is this person I want to be with, not hey, what else is out there, or am I missing something,
Right, yeah.
If this person is doesn't feel like the one, then I would say don't just date them just because,
Can I say something to the doubt question? I think that everybody is different. Everybody has different unique personalities and experiences and all that. I had, even though I'm the one that went on the date with the other person, I had zero doubt that I very much cared about Josh, and I had the unique perspective of knowing him my whole life, except that we found out, which maybe we'll talk about, we didn't know each other at all once we got married. We figured out a lot of things, but But the doubt thing was an interesting thing because, like I said, we started dating whenever I was 18 and you were 19, but we spent that a lot of time before that, kind of back and forth, kind of date. We would go, to prom together or go to different dates. But when we finally started dating and started having these conversations about doubts, because I would ask him what took you so long to get here? I mean, we've been around each other, we've been dating, but what took you so long? And he would admittedly say it was this fear of, if we do step into this is it. So doubts about each other, I don't know, but he definitely was slower in pursuing that because of the fear of this is it.
So maybe it was easier just to make the assumption in your head at first, right?
Yeah. I had been thinking about it a lot, and so I knew.
Right.
She just didn't know. And she kind of said, on my side of it, the doubt was more in myself, about me being ready, not about her. Again, it's, each story is different, each relationship, how long you've known each other, but some of these main things are the same about who you are, who the person is that you want to date or are dating. Those things are always going to be the same, and the same kind of concept or thing to be thinking and checking.
And we already have a couple anonymous questions. Before we get to those, those are a little bit more in the marriage section. But how did you always have that feeling that Josh is the one, Tori is the one for me? At what point did you know that this is the one? Did you get an answer from God, or were you reading the Bible when this happened, or were you praying about it, or was it all emotions?
I was not reading the Bible when it happened. I think that for us, and again, that kind of being afraid of the commitment, because I felt like I did know before we started officially dating at 18. And I think that's kind of where my hesitation came in, because I was not that I was hesitating whether I wanted to be with her, but it was more hesitation of this is it, and am I ready to go all in?
So I was a very spiritual teenager, and I probably was reading the Bible to find out if that was the case. No, I'm just kidding. But really, I do feel that. I prayed a lot about that, and I felt like he was my husband from a young age. Now, did I always live like that? Maybe not. But interesting part of that question is I had zero doubt. Whenever we were dating and getting engaged and getting married, and then we got married. And I won't say that we ever doubted that we married the right person, but no, I'm just answering the question about doubts. But there was just the doubt feeling for me came a little bit later about, did we miss maybe the timing? Is this too soon? Is it too much? And so not doubt specifically again about him, but there was.
And how young were you both?
20 and 21.
20 and 21, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, we're very young. We couldn't even rent a car on our honeymoon, so we were very young. Yeah.
We have one question. Who gave the first kiss?
I would say it's mutual. It was one of those things. You're just
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Yeah. And here's the funny thing is we said we started dating at 18. However, that first kiss happened when we were 15 and 16. Whoa. Yeah, this is to stay in this room only. All this information tonight, right? Because we, like I said, we knew each other our whole lives and kind of went back and forth. And that back and forth element of it made it difficult for me as we got married and got older, because it was like, are you sure you're sure? You know, because it was like we kind of dated and then like other things would happen or we would date other people and whatever. But yeah, that first kiss, I mean, for me in my mind, like that was it, you know, and then yeah, so but there wasn't like follow through of like, now let's date after that. So it's a little confusing, to be honest.
Was it
We sort of
nonverbal agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, this next question I think works whether you're currently in a relationship or married. Is what is the best way that you have found to come back together after conflict and argument? Because I'm sure you had plenty of those before you're married, and you've had them when you're married as well. Do you have like a certain system in place, or who is the first one that always agrees, I'm going to be the one that says I'm sorry, even just to make peace in the family? Or do you both say sorry at the same time? Whatever, you know.
Well, I feel like this could be a whole hour-long talk about this, because, you know, I'm the one more of like a peacekeeper type of a person, and so a lot of times, even not in the right way, would come like, I'm sorry, I don't want, like just trying to make things better without trying to figure out what was wrong and really process through that with her. Just trying to make everything feel okay. So we've really learned a lot and more every year. And that's one of the things that I would say, you know, to anybody wanting to be in a relationship, getting married, or even after you're married, is like, it's constantly a growing process, and it's constantly a getting to know each other more, even 23 years later. And just working through all the things to come to know each other and work together better.
Yeah, and I would say that, I mean, this can apply not just in dating relationships, but in any, you know, like actual close relationships that you have with people, that coming back together after a disagreement, which is important and necessary for growth, is that you just need grace. You gotta have grace for them, grace for yourself. And Josh is definitely, like he said, the one that says sorry first, always. And I found that, like, you know, you hear people say it's really hard to apologize to people or whatever. I actually found that it's harder to say I forgive you than to say I'm sorry. So, yeah, that's been a growing challenge for us. And I would say too, I don't think this is in our question list, but in looking for qualities in someone that you want to date or in a spouse.
Yeah, that's good. That's
above
a good topic.
Anything else, like, I mean, all the things you can think of, which things are very important, like, you know, do you agree on the big things? You know, your spiritual walk and future stuff. Yes, that's so important, but look for someone who's willing to grow. That's it. I'm telling you, like in relationships in life, if you can find someone who says, I will grow with you, you can do anything. Anything.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, and it's, yeah, you have to find somebody that is willing to grow, to learn, to work, you know, with you.
And that'll help get through conflicts and arguments, because
exactly, because that's what we've done over the past even 23 years, and is to grow in the first year, the second year, and even like the 10th year. Like, we learned more how to communicate, more how to express how we feel, and you know, it's not like the person's going to learn everything in you know, real quick in this first month. Are you willing to grow? And we're going to grow and all this stuff.
Let's get into an argument right now so we can grow.
But I think you can tell when somebody is completely unwilling, you know, and I don't know that anybody here would be completely unwilling, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's definitely a thing. Like, if a person's like, this is who I am, you're not changing me, and then you continue, like, you talk about it, and they're like, no, this is who I am, you know, whatever, like, That's a little bit of an issue because relationships, whether it's marriage, dating, or whatever, is a growing together, growing closer, but that happens when you each grow individually.
That's good. That's good. Moving to kind of like the advice portion, could you give maybe 3 to 5 tidbits advice to us that that is a must? And I know we kind of just talked about like the one of them would be definitely someone who's willing to grow, but is a must to be in a healthy relationship. Something that comes up to your mind, 3 to 5 things that you're like, okay, this, for boys, from the boys' side and from the girls' side.
Well, I think from either side, and this is like just going right in real deep, but to be in a relationship where you're going to be intimate and grow with someone, really you can just go ahead and mark it down now and plan ahead that what it is dying to yourself every day. And that's just the bottom line of it. And that sounds really harsh or like, big, but it is, because selflessness is a huge part of really being able to see somebody else and being able to honor them and grow together. But you want to know specific advice for dating relationships, or
just being in, like, what are things that you should see in a healthy relationship?
And
like
I
one
think
of them, both of you are ready to grow.
Yes, and
So,
I think that is an enormous one. And I think too that watching people, observing like how they process, life moments or events, maybe not even with you, but just watching like, okay, so this is how that works. And because one of the greatest pieces of advice that we heard like in marriage, and we've told our son who's now getting married, is, choose someone that you can suffer alongside. And again, I know that sounds so like deep and dark and whatever, but we have faced in 23 years things that our 18 to 19-year-old selves would have never thought we could get through. And walking through really hard stuff, I've been extremely grateful to have somebody who I can suffer alongside well. Because life is going to throw things at you that are shocking, that you're unprepared for, that you can't plan for. And so choose somebody that you're seeing like, wow, I could walk with them through that. Because it's, life's an adventure, and I can't imagine, for me, I'll just be honest, like I am more, I would say short-tempered than Josh is. Josh is very like, just all the time pretty chill, unless he's not, and then that's very rare. That's very rare, but unless he's driving, and then I have to really be a Christian then. So I probably would have lost my mind dating someone who was similar to me in that, like, I don't know, I'm just very like passionate, or I feel things really strong, or like in a moment, and like we had to navigate some of this even dating, because in one of those pictures that you just saw, Josh was actually my boss. We worked at a cafe that our church had with a bowling alley and all this stuff, and I said, I will never work for him again, because he was so bossy and kept telling me to stop talking to my friends, and here we are now. But
And you were dating at the time?
we were dating at the time, and it was awful. He just was so bossy. Anyway, no, but I'd watch him in those kind of situations. I'm just kidding I was not kidding. I was really mad. I was like, I will talk to my friends if I want to. That's not going to work. But I would watch him in situations, just in different things in life. And actually, when we started dating, probably, I don't know, like a month in, his family faced a pretty huge crisis, and I watched to see, like, how is he going to handle this? And there were some things like, okay, so he internalizes things, and we're not going to talk about it, and those kinds of things that we've had to grow in. But yeah, be very aware of just like, and in yourself, like, how am I handling this situation? But I think choose somebody who you want to walk through all those life. If you fall in love and it's wonderful and so good, that's great. But it's not always going to be that way, because that's not reality. Reality is that you're going to face real life situations over and over again, and who's somebody that you want to walk that out with.
Yeah, because it's probably easy to, you can go through easy parts, fun parts with anybody. It's the hard parts that take
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think as you were the question and trying to think about when you said for girls, think about guys. I don't know that I can think of anything that is specific to guys and girls, because I feel like then those things are just picking out like characteristics more than like qualities. So I'm not sure. Maybe you can help with that. But like you were saying, there's just definitely specific things, and we all have different personalities. Ours are very different. You know, we have friends that are very more similar, and that creates its own good things, but it also creates its own hard things, like when you're similar to each other. And it's not necessarily that you have to be different from each other, because that just complements each other, and that's what you need. But you know, even if you're very similar, that can work too. But it really comes to the working and growing and you know, getting to know each other better and being able to communicate and work together. I think that you know, I was thinking about this and wanted to kind of mention, I think it goes in this segment, is just that, like, when you're looking to, it's like, hey, what is it that, you know, I'm looking for, that I should look for in a relationship with somebody, or a spouse, or whatever, that, like, a lot of times we get hung up on qualities and not the person. And I think that those things, and of course, we all have those, you know, hey, this is kind of my type that I like, you know, or whatever. But getting hung up on those things keeps us from really finding the person that is in there, you know, because, you know, there's sometimes, it's like, I'm sure there's things, I don't know what they are, but that Tori, you know, may not love about me, and I don't think there's anything I don't know about. I don't know. Maybe it's a short temper, I don't know. But anyway, you know, it's really, sometimes we miss something really great because we get hung up on, you know, this guy's, you know, got a mustache, and I don't like mustaches or whatever. And it's like, well, I mean, he could shave it, he could grow a beard, he could whatever, you know, but you get the point, right? It's like, there's just sometimes we miss things because we're looking at superficial things. And then, I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Well, no, I like how you mentioned how when two people are very different, that can cause its own problems and its own positivities. But a lot of people are like, oh, they just need to be similar with me, and then everything will be good. But you mentioned that being similar to someone as well that's not going to just magically make everything better. It just there's problems in both. So focusing too much on that can be an issue. That's what I took from it, which is really interesting perspective.
I really have the perspective that whether it's in relationships and those qualities or the characteristics, or in marriage or in raising kids, is like, well, when they're older, you know, it's going to be easier or whatever, but there's just, or if the person is very similar to me, then everything's going to be easier. Or if the person is totally different from me, we're going to get along a lot better. There's just different challenges. And in marriage, each year, there'll just be different challenges. And when you do have kids, you know, it's so much fun, but really hard when they're babies. And you're like, it's going to be easier when they grow. Well, some things are way easier when they grow up. Other things are more challenging. So you just have that is where that growth and being willing to learn, grow, become a better person comes in really any area of your life. You know, so.
And I think that there's a question from that we got, I think that kind of goes good into that segue, is that the question reads, there's a debate that the theory that the one and only is not true because you can hypothetically get along with anyone. Since you knew each other almost your whole lives, do you see this to be true?
We always joke, or used to joke, that like we had an arranged marriage because our parents, you know, knew each other. Our dads actually knew each other in grade school, So we
That's
always,
two.
yeah, you did arrange marriage, but there has been many times that question that we've asked each other, like, do you think this is like there is only one person? Like, what if we actually just played that game in the car with our kids the other day? What is your what if? You know, and I believe that yeah, you probably can't get along with anybody, but I think that being a person of prayer and being before the Lord saying, okay, God, what do you have for me? I know that specifically in our lives that He somehow had a plan all along that we would grow up in this church. I think it was very purposeful that it's not just Josh's dad was the pastor of this church, but somehow he placed me here to grow up also here to have a heart and love the people in this church. So then whenever I would grow up and be, 18 years old, that God knew the plan, that then that was an integral part of my future for what He wanted to do in my life and in yours. And so I don't know that, like soulmates, and is there just one person? I think you just have to be asking God constantly, like, I have these feelings for this person, or I'm leaning toward this way. God, and Josh would always say, like, we just walk toward in His peace. And so every step that we took in our relationship was we had peace about, like, okay, we're going to move forward. And I mean, honestly, I've talked to people before that have been like, I think your mom was even one of them, where it's like, God always told me I was going to marry a pastor, and your dad said he wasn't going to be a pastor, so she said, we're going to break up unless I have peace to go further, and it's like people that they get to their wedding day and, like, they're in the back room thinking, I don't know if this isn't right, God, you have to tell me, otherwise I'm just going to go for it. But I think that people get caught up on that a lot, like you said, like missing something, or is this it? And I think you just have to have that relationship with the Lord, which I would also say is so vitally important to being in a relationship. Is, we've always said in marriage counseling and all of that, you have to be two individual whole people to come together and make one. God's math doesn't make sense that these two people come together and make one, but they have to be whole. And not that you don't have stuff to work through, but I think that He brings whole people together to create really, really cool things, and that He wants to do, but we have to be willing to hear Him speak and say, hey, this is what I have for your future. Will you say yes? And I've had to wrestle with the question of, if we hadn't gotten married, would I still be a pastor? Would I still care for people the way that I do? And I do believe that I would. But this union is basically comes out of our obedience to what God was speaking to us. So I don't know if that really answers that question, but you say I'm the one.
Yeah, the only one. Yeah, this is one of those questions.
It's it's a hard one.
One of those questions, and this is kind of about relationships, kind of just about the Bible and God, is that there are certain things that you cannot change or argue the fact of this is the truth and what we should believe. And there's a lot of other things that are like, when you talk about, end times, or you talk about lots of different things, like you can't change Christ, Him being crucified, being raised from the dead, seated at the right hand, what we believe as believers. But there's other things that we don't have exact answers on. And this is one of those things that I would say, I believe God has created somebody for you, but I don't have an exact answer on, so I can't tell you, yes, there's just one person.
Right, yeah, because...
So it's not giving an answer, but giving an answer.
Right, because we see couples that go through on the brink of divorce, and then they give it to God, and God completely changes them. So it almost seems like, oh man, these two people should have never been together, but in the end, they stay together, and they're in a very happy
And let me give you
marriage.
a piece of future advice. Well, either for relationships or marriage. I've seen it used before that to break up a relationship, before marriage and after marriage, of, well, this was actually the person that I was supposed to be with, that God created for me. You know what? If you got married, that's the person now. That is a covenant before God, and you have made a commitment. Now, don't want to get into all kinds of other stuff. And it's, if stuff happens, it's not like, well, I was already married once and, I can't get married again. I'm just telling you, when you come into a relationship, be committed to the relationship and to the commitment and work on that. And I believe that God honors that. And we can't be thinking, it goes back to the other, I think, question that was, I can't remember, but.
Yeah, the advice question.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So let me just see here. Kind of goes. Okay, so that kind of goes. What we're talking about. Someone wrote, "Does God let you know when it's the right person?" I think we kind of touched on that.
Yes, the peace and the asking Him, spending time with Him, saying, God. And that's what I've always done in many areas of my life is, sometimes God speaks very strongly and even audibly. It doesn't happen all the time. Like He can be very strong and also it can be like I ask God, make me sick. And that's kind of how in a lot of times, like my spirit, like I will get like this is not right, whatever it is, and I ask God, let me be at peace or make me so uncomfortable and almost ill so that I know that this isn't the right decision or whatever. And like I said, that's about lots of things, but even about relationships or about direction or whatever.
So how do you feel that this kind of just popped in my head, like those situations where people are engaged already and one of them breaks up the engagement, and that at that moment, I guess they had feeling that it wasn't from God or...
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's the best thing to do.
Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of the thing,
exactly.
Like, that stuff doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. That like, okay, I don't have peace about this. And it's better to do it before marriage.
It's better to do it, even in engagement. We don't love to see that, to get to that point and then there be some kind of a split or a breaking it off. But of course, nobody wants to see that. But yes, I mean, figuring out those things and going through the process. Hopefully, in dating and in that formal relationship before engagement, but also in that. I mean, it's still like. And things can get busy, which can cause conflict in engagement, planning for weddings, all that stuff. But that can be a growing point, or more of an understanding of like maybe this isn't the right thing. So
yeah, I mean, I think about you guys and like in your engagement process and how much like tension and stress that there was around all of that. And we only saw it from your side, Dennis. We didn't know you yet, Dasha, but just knowing that can cause so much. But again, you look at each other and think, how are we going to walk through this? And here you are today. So it worked out. You chose wisely.
Yeah, and kind of, I know I'm interviewing you guys, but just like a thought that came into my head is just about how God can turn things around, just as we were sinners. So it seems like, oh dang, I got into this wrong marriage or whatever thoughts like what people might have. It's like, well, no, God can still turn that around for His good, just as how we were saved by Jesus Christ dying on the cross for us. It's like that. He flips things over completely. So yeah, that's something good. But okay, this is now kind of segueing into moments of marriage and things like that. But for Josh specifically, question: were you scared to mess up? I guess they mean like as the husband of the relationship, like being the leader of the family, or like I'm guessing that's what the question means.
always, always. I mean, that's not. It can be a bad thing, and it could be, a good thing. Being comfortable and not being, I guess, nervous about things. Sometimes we get cocky, and then it's not a good thing. But then also being scared can hold us back. So yes, in many ways, even to this day, and there's different things, I'm like, in leading in our relationship, our family. Yes, back when we were dating or engaged, scared about like being that leader and taking care of my family and thinking about those things. Yes, but again, I think we're probably going to say this, or at least I am, over and over and over. Those places are places for growth, right? Like growth happens, I say this all the time, growth happens in tension or in pressing, in those moments. Growth doesn't happen when things are easy, growth happens whenever we go through something that's hard, or we purposefully, even if it's not hard, I'm gonna push myself to grow. So like that timidness or being a little bit, scared about coming into the relationship or being married and being a husband, and yes, that's there, but it's taking and doing the right thing with it. Saying, God, help me with this. God, help me in my reservations, or help me like if I'm feeling like I don't know what to do, or help me if I'm a little bit scared about this next step in the relationship, or what our next step is in our, marriage or our family or whatever. If I'm feeling scared, God, help me to understand. Give me wisdom. Give me the strength, because it's by Him that we can do that anyways, and then coming before Him and saying, I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to grow.
Yeah, and they sent the like, mess up and doing something wrong, but I think you answered that, how you need to do it with the wisdom of God and going through with the knowledge that He gives you.
And that leads me to something else I thought about earlier, I forgot to mention it, is that I forgot it.
No.
I'll remember in a second, probably.
Okay, so just stop whatever you were saying and just say that. So I think this is a question that a lot of people have, and from your opinion, obviously this kind of stuff isn't gospel, it's just opinion based, but just from your experience and from maybe seeing other couples as well, is how long should you date before proposing? And I know that can be a unique situation for everyone, but maybe there's some kind of rule of thumb that you have seen in your own lives or in other people's lives.
Yeah, and I think that is a very, it's a hard question to have a formula to, because I wouldn't say that everybody should do it just like we did. But I remember that whenever we got engaged, that I asked him again. I always had questions, and I said, "Well, what made you think like this is the time?" And we had, talked about it. We dated for a year, and then we were engaged for a year, which I think is entirely too long for us. It was, but I was also in school. But he said, "I wanted to be emotionally, spiritually, and financially prepared to lead you."
Okay.
And that was, it was good for me to hear that, like, okay, so we've thought about this process. It's not just like, today seemed like the day, and now we've walked through.
And don't take that as I was that.
Oh, we had no money, and we were.
We didn't have all kinds of money, and I wasn't like this spiritual giant, but like I didn't feel like I was at the places I needed to be. So. And I think actually that kind of takes me to, sorry, will you remember what you were saying? Okay, good, because I forget all the time. It is that,
No, you forgot?
I think I did. No.
He's showing his age. We're with the cool kids tonight. We're with the young adults. We gotta be young. It's okay. He's had a long day. Anyway, what I was gonna say is, so our only practice in this question is, we've had, obviously we're pastors, so we walk people through these moments as well, of like, when's the time, and praying through that or whatever. But then we've experienced this with our own son, which I know we are way too young to be having a kid getting married, but somehow that's what happened. And he's getting married in a month, and it was really a really cool dynamic to see whenever he called us, because he lives out of town, and he called and he said, so I met a girl, and Immediately, I'm like, what is her name? Give me I'll find her social security number in 2 minutes. Watch it. And he said, no, Mom, she doesn't have social media. You're not going to find her. Well, he messed up and told me where she worked. And so I had her picked up. I mean, she was pulled up, and I sent him a picture immediately. And he's like, you are so weird. But whenever he called and said this, he said, I'm just going to take her on a date and just see what happens. And I said, that's, our son has dated. He was in 2 relationships that were longer than probably we would have liked. It wasn't really, we knew that wasn't probably going to be the future for him, but allowing him that space to figure that out. So anyway, he calls and says, I met this girl, and I don't know, there's just something about her. And so as soon as he said that, immediately as his parents were like, okay, could this be it? And then they went out on a date, and after he called back home, I told Josh, I said, there's something. I don't know, and I mean, it could be a long time from now, but 2 weeks later he called us and said, well, I need you to come meet me halfway in Nashville. I need you to meet her because I need to know what you think about her, which I thought was amazing to have your kids say it matters what we think, and we didn't completely screw them up. It's pretty incredible. But once, I think that was an important factor was, you asked like, when do you know? And I think in that dating relationship, let your people meet your person and just see what happens there. I mean, you may have family conflict and conflict with people, in your relationship. It's fine. That's going to be expected. There's going to be things, but let the people who are closest to you also meet this person and experience that, because that was a deal changer for him. And he said, okay, like we spent the weekend together, and then we just went on the fast track. And now, I mean, they dated for 9 months. By the time, I guess, that they get married, it'll be a year. So very fast, but it's the right thing. It's the right thing. We've watched them walk through. Another thing is they've had people in their life, leaders who have spoken truth to them and held them accountable and walked that out. And that is huge. Have people in your life. Don't just go off in a corner and date alone. Have people who will speak truth to you. It makes all the difference.
That's good. Did you remember what you wanted to say?
I think I did. I wrote something down. I think it was something different, but yeah, I was just gonna kind of relate to that like we don't think. I don't know. Did we specifically? I think we talked about it maybe a little bit, but we don't see it as like a certain time frame, a certain thing. It is, again, you just said we did it for a year and we're engaged for a year, but it really is about that place. Maybe dating for, I don't think you should probably be engaged for more than a year, for sure. But dating for like 6 years might be like, okay, what's going on, Yeah, I mean, it might. I mean, there might be reasons. One of the reasons that we took some time is because of schooling and because of different things happening in our lives. So it's figuring those things out. But being in a place where you're like ready to get married and you just put it off for a long time, that just creates issues of like, wanting to be married, wanting to do the married things, and not being married yet. So, it's really finding that time that God is, if it's happening fast, that's fine, as long as everything is, like with our son, within a year, like kind of all these things happened. If that's where God is leading you.
What topics need to be discussed before getting married?
Everything.
I mean, yeah.
And this is a good thing. We've counseled a good number of people before marriage and all these things. And one of the things we always say is talk about everything. Even if you don't think it's important, talk about everything. And you're still not gonna have everything figured out. You're gonna get married, and the first year you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, why didn't we talk about this? And you're like, well, we talked about this. We thought we talked about everything. We thought we figured everything out, and you're still not going to have it figured out. So, I mean, finances are big. future
How many
plans
kids
with
you want
kids
is a big
are big things, you know. I mean, because I don't know if I've seen it this drastic, but you know, somebody may be like, I want 4 or 5 kids. Another person's like, I really don't want kids at all.
Surprise,
That's a big
surprise.
thing, you know. It's not like one person wanting 2 kids and one person wanting 4 kids. It's like, no, I don't ever want to have kids, and I want to have a lot of kids. So like, you know, that's a lot.
Something like want to know.
Yeah,
ahead
I
of
mean,
time.
yeah, I mean, how you're going to handle finances and kids and family, and a lot of those things are pretty important.
So being as unified as possible, being on the same page.
And you don't have to agree on everything, but I think that, you know, hearing each other's perspective, and we've changed our minds about different things, you know, we're growing together. But another thing that's important in dating is that family aspect of, you know, those thoughts, which comes up more whenever you're engaged and going to be married. Those in-laws can be a fun topic, so.
Yeah, in-laws.
Yeah, I mean, talking about families is very good too, because, you know, some people are really close with their families, some people are not close at all with their families. And so, you know, hopefully, you know, everybody's close with their families. This is what you want, which what would be great. But all that, you know, comes into play in being engaged and being married with, you know, the time you spend for whether it's just holidays or I actually, you know, eat dinner, you know, with my family 3 times a week. And I want to continue doing that after we're married. And, you know, like there's so many different things that you know.
When we first got married, we lived in the city. We had a little house that we rented in the city, and my parents and his parents, they all lived like out this way, and we both worked out here. So what we ended up finding ourselves doing is, you know, we were young, and we would go to one of their houses for dinner and spend the night all week long. And then we're like, probably we should go to our own house, and you know, and then we moved away, very far away, you know, to California. We moved to Los Angeles, and learned a lot about us together, and there were no parents there to cook us dinner.
Yeah, that must have been like a huge changing factor where you're
Shocking.
very far away from any support.
Yeah, and in that story, like just that piece of advice in that story is getting or having time with family and going and spending time with her family or my family was not a wrong thing to do. But letting that kind of control our marriage, or not necessarily like our parents were controlling us, but more like it was easy just to go get food and, you know, hang out there. It kept us from getting closer together in those times because we were just hanging out with family members on her side, my side, or whatever. So, you know, make sure to make your relationship a priority and extended family underneath that.
Yeah, because that
Yes.
especially mothers.
Right. Yeah. And really, going away from family was hard, but really was one of the greatest moments for us to grow together. I'm not saying move away from your family. What I'm saying is just see that spending so much time and just like being with your parents, or I need to be with them so they can help us, or whatever, takes away from that growth in that relationship. So make sure to spend more time with the two of you.
And so it's totally okay to say, well, not this is a little bit strong, but like putting your foot down and saying like, let's do something for our family. Like let's give up some traditions that we may have done.
Yeah. And we've done that over the years. I mean, it's like when it comes to, you know, grandkids, or like when you get married, we're talking about married, you know, I would spend before that time with my family for holidays. She would spend time with her family for holidays, and then we got together. It was like we were trying to do all of it. And it's a certain point we said, well, we can't do all of it. And it's not super easy, but we said, well, we'll do this year. We'll go, you know, I don't know what point it was. We'll do Easter with, you know, your family, and Christmas with my family, or Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying? Because it was better for us as a family, instead of like basically running around having like, oh, we got 2 hours here, we got 2 hours here, 2 hours here.
Yeah, that sounds nightmare. That sounds
Yes,
hard.
I mean, but making those decisions for this relationship and this family, so that this can be healthy, not just to make sure your parents are okay or your extended family is okay.
We have a question. How did having kids change your relationship? Or did it change your relationship?
It did. And let's just say taking it as a whole, one of the things, because our kids are growing, getting older now, that we've seen is that we now need to work even more on our relationship, because as your kids are growing up, you do spend a whole lot of time being parents, doing, things with your kids and helping them so much that there aren't as many, times in the day to grow our relationship, right? And we have, and we've worked on it and all this stuff. But what we've seen in other couples, and it's helped us to say, like, ooh, wow, we need to really work on this, is that when your kids grow up, and I know this is super far in the future for every single one of you guys, but when your kids grow up and move out of the house, it's just you two again. If that relationship hasn't been worked on, and when your kids are babies, thinking, this baby isn't a priority. Again, seems strong. This baby is not a priority over our relationship. We're not going to let our relationship go to the side for this 5-year-old. We're gonna, right. I mean, we actually, when our kids were growing up, like we didn't do amazing. Like we did really good with our kids. We didn't do everything right. But one of the things that we did was which is hard at the time, but to allow our kids to see us spending time together, and you're not actually gonna come. You go play, we're spending time together. And this isn't like all day. I'm saying like, it was like, we were at work, we hadn't seen each other, and coming, sitting down, and the kids are like, oh, let's go play, let's do this. You go this way, you go that way. They want to be the center of attention. But really, and a lot of times you think, well, that's going to help them. But really what helps your kids most is seeing a mom and dad that love each other and that care for each other, even enough to say, you need to wait, because they care for each other so much. And your kids will be way more secure in themselves and in who they are because of a strong relationship with their parents.
I recently, I guess like this year, because we are raising now adults almost, which is so weird. But one of the things that I heard somebody say is that they were asking in an interview, like, name one word that basically describes parenting, and it was confronting. And it took me a minute to really let that sink in, and I thought, those stinking kids have confronted every insecurity in us, every flaw that we have, not on purpose. They're not going around calling it out, but it's something that you make these people, and they're just like you in different ways, and you're gonna see yourself. Oh, and these are wow, my gosh, you're 19 years old, and I see myself I'm still dealing with that, and I'm seeing it in you. We can't both be dealing with this. So having kids is very confronting and really just helps you, face some of those things within yourself that maybe you hadn't noticed before, till you see it play out in a temper tantrum or something else wonderful. Lots of things. We say a lot that our kids got the very best of us in so many ways, and then sometimes we see there's other parts that we wish they didn't get, and it's okay. Yeah, it's good though. It's good, and it's confronting us every day.
Secrets.
Yeah, давай книжку. Somewhat kind of like a subtopic really quickly. What books would you recommend about for relationships and I guess for marriages as well?
So, a really good book about marriage that is just like really lays it out there, I feel like is really deep and kind of really makes you think. It's called This Momentary Marriage, I think is what it's called. It's by John Piper. It's really good. But a book that I would say is highly recommended by my son, who is now engaged but was single, is called, I think it's called Single and Secure. It's by Rich Wilkerson. But I feel like there's so many books that are about being single, but they don't really teach you what's most important, which is what we said, and that's being an individual, being secure in who you are is what's going to matter the most. And so I think that
It helps in marriage because
it will help.
be who you are.
Yeah, and it also helps you in your singleness and just knowing that there's not something wrong with you, or you're not incomplete because you're single. God has purpose for you right there. And so I think that is important. I wish we were so young, but I remember getting married and thinking, oh my gosh, like after the wedding was over and thinking, I built my whole life around this moment, and now who am I? What am I doing? Do I have any purpose? Like all those questions that you probably face any time in life at that age anyway, but it was especially magnified because I didn't know what to do after that. And so I think that the more that you can invest in knowing the Lord, knowing yourself before you get married, the better you're going to do.
Yeah, and I would say that, because we're usually pretty real and pretty honest, that we've gone, done marriage counseling and different counseling individually, and yes, us. We've given marriage counseling. We've also gone to marriage counseling. Yes. And one of the things, with us, and that was being shared with us, is in these different moments was, we were so wrapped up in who we are as a couple, we had lost some of that individuality. Yeah. And even further along in marriage, saying, the best relationships are you think you just said this, but two whole individual people. One, it's not half and a half becomes one, like our math does, but God's math is one whole person, secure who they are in God, and another whole person becoming one. That's God's math. But we stay still one whole person. And so it's a big thing, it's called, I forget what they call the technical term for it, but intertwined, being intertwined. It's like a rope, you can't pull it apart, but being two people,
And I want to make sure that everyone's question is answered. Another question is, what are some of the myths you encountered about marriage once you stepped into marriage? So I'm guessing, what myths have you heard, and then you got into the marriage and it's that's definitely a myth.
I remember one, we were like, this is not what they said it was going to be. But was first year is the honeymoon year, it's going to be great, and then the second year, it gets really hard. Nope. First year was not.
We hear
a honeymoon.
First year is the hardest.
First year's hard. We had a way better year the second year. There's lots of things like that. What things do you think about?
What? Oh, no. Yes. Yeah. I think, thinking that it's just going to get easier, or you're just going to get to go on autopilot, you never get to do that. You're always going to be challenged and growing, and Dennis wants me to tell you a story about how much I've grown and Josh has grown. But when we first got married, I think, and that communication is going to get easier. There's just going to be different things that you face. We're in a different season of life where we have to communicate more because we have weddings to do and all these things. But anyway, we first got married. We were married, I think, for a year. We had been married for a year. Again, it was in that first year. And it was my birthday, and I was having, just a little bit of a rough time around that time, because I'll just say this, and it's in with all my love and affection toward you, but sometimes Josh wasn't the most thoughtful person, not on purpose, but just wasn't. Maybe hadn't learned that or whatever. So anyway, it's my birthday, and I asked if we could go out of town for my birthday, so we went to Chicago. Seemed like a great idea. We were just married, and we drove all the way to Chicago, had a good weekend, and then I noticed it was Sunday. We never missed church, but we didn't go to church because I was just enjoying this time, whatever. And I kept noticing him looking at his watch, and I was like, "Why you look like, what is going on? Like, what are you?" He's like, "You think we should head home soon? Like, we should get on the road?" I was like, we got all day. It only takes us 4.5 hours to get home. Like, and he's like, "Yeah, I think we should maybe head home." And it just kept looking. So finally I'm like, "We can go, I guess." We get in the car, and it hit me. I know exactly what's going on. He wants to go play basketball tonight. Well, this was not the greatest thing to find out on your birthday weekend, that your husband was going home to play basketball with the boys. So that is a long trip home when you do not speak for the entire trip, which I did not say a word, and I looked out. I know all of Illinois, that out the window, nothing before me, all the farmland, all the crops, all the things, because I was not about to look in his direction. I was so angry, so mad. And you didn't talk either, because I think he was still determined to go do this, but he just, he knew he was wrong, but he was still going to do it. So anyway, we got home, and I thought, as mad as I am, there's steam coming out of my ears. I know I'm bright red, and I'm going to slam that door. I know as soon as we get home, and I go in, throw my suitcase down, slam the door, go to change, and the man is upstairs in the bedroom putting on gym shorts. He's leaving. He did not get the clue. And so, of course, I was not communicating or saying anything either, but he went and played basketball, and while he was at basketball, that was my decision. I was going to leave. I was gone. So I packed up my purse and went to Target and thought, whenever he gets home, I won't be there, so it'll be really dramatic, and he'll get the point that he did wrong. However, my trip to Target didn't last as long as his basketball game, so I ended up beating him home and sitting on the couch whenever he came in, and that was a pretty large argument that night. And it's just so funny to look back at Josh and Tori at that age, and we would you weren't hearing a word I was saying, and I couldn't understand at all where you're coming from. We both did wrong. But yeah, I left him that night and went to Target. It was over. I was done. And then he still didn't come home. So anyway, we've learned a lot, because still to this day, what we've had to learn in that is that it's vitally important for Josh to get this energy that's in him out, and doing those kinds of things, playing basketball. He plays soccer still every Tuesday night. And that is really important, but we didn't know how to communicate that. I didn't know the language yet. He didn't know to say, "I need this in order to be a better husband or be a better man." And I just took it you don't care about me, and you don't even understand any social cues at this point, because I didn't talk to you for 5 hours.
So this, I think, brings to the point. But yes, I was pretty stubborn and strong-headed. Still can be. But I've grown. So I've definitely learned a few things in the past 23 years. And one of the things, what she just mentioned, is that for me, with stress and with all this stuff, I need to get, it helps me, my personality, whoever I am, to go and basically lay it all out on the basketball court, the soccer field, whatever, and that helps me mentally. And different people are different, but or working out or what have you. And it kind of brings me to, for girls, there's different things too. It's this, I feel like I need to do this because it helps me. It's like my hobby. It's what I do. It helps me to get my mind off things or whatever. But I think what that brings me to is hobbies are good, but we can't let them take take precedence over our relationship. So she said, I do play soccer, but I've grown a lot, and it's not going to take precedence over what, our relationship or us spending time together. So we try to make room for that, and I do it most every time, but I'm not gonna rush home from a trip to go to soccer now, or anything like that.
And I think too, that component we've been talking about the whole time is knowing yourself. You have to know, we didn't know enough about our individual selves at that point to be able to even express hey, this is why this, or this is, I didn't even know why I was responding that way, to be honest, and he didn't know why it was such a big deal that no matter what happened, he still went and did that. But now we're able to say, hey, I think I need this, or as a mom and from what we do for our job and just even being together all the time, and we work together every single day, which is a unique situation too. There's some times where I just look at him and say, I think what I actually need right now is I just need to be alone for maybe a few hours. And I could never express that before. I think I would just get upset or wouldn't know what was wrong. And learning who you are and what your needs are also is very helpful in any relationship. To be able to communicate that and say to someone, this is what I need, is so valuable.
Yeah, pre or post marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this kind of goes with that, is that learning who we are, but also learning our spouse. This goes with even how they feel affection or how they feel loved, and because there's lots of different ways that people feel loved. It's physical touch. It's what Tori says all the time to people. It's she feels weird now if I'm not put my hand on her, hold her hand, somehow touching her like this. It's odd because I feel I always have to just have that helps me, that physical touch. There's words and words of affirmation and gifts and different things and of course in all these we can't focus on one and say, well, first of all, we can't just try to do how we feel loved. So me just being don't you just feel loved because I put my hand on you and because we're close together, whenever that's not how she feels loved. I mean, she feels loved, but it's not really how she gets filled up by me. And so it's learning your spouse or your person you're dating, how is it that I can help them to feel secure, to feel loved, to feel taken care of.
When talking about the 5 love languages, which is what he's referring to, when we lived in Los Angeles, somebody gave us that book, and they give it to all the new married couples, and it's here, learn how to fill each other's love bucket and all this stuff. And so I remember that we had a newborn baby, and we were living in LA, and I didn't have community, and I was really struggling, and it was just really hard. And so I read that book, and I thought, this is what my problem is. He is not filling my love bucket. That's what's happening. And I didn't read it for how can I better love him? It was for me, I am so depleted right now. I can't. So then I just got convicted, and I'm you know what? I shouldn't be reading a book to say he needs to give this to me. I should be reading it, and how can I help him? So I got convicted, and I was I'm going to throw this book away. However, one of my love languages is acts of service, which means whenever people do the things that they said that they were going to do around the house. And the trash was completely full because he hadn't taken it out. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to throw this book away. I'm going to set it right on top of this trash. So whenever he gets home and he sees this, then he'll know that I threw this away because, so the whole thing totally messed up. But I had to get even more convicted about that. Took the trash out myself with the book on it, and he didn't even know until years later. So yeah, that's where the Holy Spirit got me.
Well, what I just like about the Chicago story and the book story and all of those is it just shows at those moments it seems this is the worst thing ever. How am I ever going to get through it? Yeah. And yet here you are, 23 years in marriage and doing fine. You're getting through it, and so it's just happily married doesn't mean that everything is just going to be always on.
That is a myth.
Yeah, no,
that's a myth.
Okay, so we're coming close on time, but I just want to rapid fire answer this question because I want everyone to get their questions answered. Is after knowing the person, so you each other, for so long, how do you keep the conversations up? Do you ever get tired of each other?
Do you ever get tired of each other? Absolutely. Oh, sometimes we have to just say, like, you're getting on my nerves. So that, like, but keeping the conversations up, I will say, and I don't know if it's always this way, but I think that there's probably in relationships one that talks more and one that listens more, maybe. In ours, there is, although you talk a lot more now than you used to. But we even, like, this week, we're like, hey, let's just, like, start dating again. So we were driving, so I actually had to drive because he was on the phone doing stuff and whatever, and so we're driving and he hung up. He's like, hey, thanks so much, for driving, because I usually am not the driver. I was like, you know what, actually, you don't know this about me since we just started dating, but I prefer to be the driver, and I prefer to drive. And he's like, that's not true. I said, yeah, like, we just started dating. You don't know anything about me. But we have had to be specific and intentional in creating connection. I will say, conversation, there's always something to talk about. And sometimes it's okay to just say, I'd rather not talk right now. Or we've had to learn those silent moments. But creating connection has been top priority for our whole marriage of, it's okay to leave the kids with grandma and grandpa and just be alone together and remember, like, why are we even doing this? But conversations, yeah, how do you keep up your conversations? You ask a lot of questions.
Well, yeah. And I think that's been one of the issues that I've learned is, like, for me, because I'm more of the listener and not like, I like to listen and I don't necessarily need to talk all the time. I would ask questions. But it was more just like, for her, in her perspective, it was just me trying to get information, trying to, like, hear, how was your day, whatever. And, it's different, like, the longer you're together, and of course there's so many things we've talked about, and don't necessarily need to talk about, but there's always, the day, how you're feeling, how it's going, like, what's weighing on me, what I was excited about today. Like, there's always things. It's just being willing to talk about them.
And even with our kids, like, to make conversation at dinner, we always would do the highs and lows, and that's helpful even together. Like, what were your highs today and what were your lows? It never gets old to be asked, like, how are you? Like, actually, how are you? And so sometimes that does come with today this happened and today this happened, and that's the sum of the day, and that's all we're going to have time for today, and that's okay. But caring about somebody and asking how are you never ever gets old.
You just, I don't know. Like you. Rapid fire. That's, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. If you have final thoughts on that question, that's fine.
No, it's fine. It's good. Let's go. It's all good.
Okay. All right. So wrap it up. We have one just like little surprise question for you that was not just. We want to get the raw answer. 3 things that like Josh does for you, Tori, where you feel loved, and 3 things that Tori does for you, Josh, that you say, like, wow, I know that Tori loves me because, where it can be as simple as, Josh makes me coffee in the morning, or something like that. Any is deep. It can be as deep or as, like, simple. 3 things.
I can make a pot of coffee, but however she, like,
you're like,
does,
no, thank you.
Whatever she does in her coffee, I can't do that. So that's not it.
You on your toes.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. So nice of you.
Well, like I said, like, the physical touch for me is a thing. So, like, her being affectionate and, like, close and because, like, I'm gonna try to keep it short. But
you're gonna say PG.
well, that too. I'm like, but yeah, just like being affectionate, touch, but then also, like words of affirmation, if we're going on those kind of love languages, but like her, saying whatever, about me, or, thank you for doing this, or you did such a great job with this, or, like there's things that like, and yeah, because, I'm questioning myself all the time, and it's like having that confidence that she believes in me, or she's, rooting me on, or whatever, those affirmations. Those only two. What other things? Yeah, go ahead.
You can see if you can think of one more. I would say number one is just like him taking care of me, really. And like in that, just even this morning, we were supposed to go somewhere early this morning and get a bunch of stuff done or whatever, but it worked out that he could actually go ahead of me and I could catch up in a little bit. And he knew before I knew that I just needed that time. And that, it just means a lot whenever somebody can say, hey, I see that you need this, you don't even know you need that. And that's a huge blessing of a long time of marriage. I will not say it's always been like that. So that's a big one. Another one for me is always acts of service. Like if I come home and things are clean, which he does love to clean, more than probably the average guy, that it just means a lot to me. I remember going on trips with friends or whatever, and they would like be like, whenever I got home, my husband bought me a gift or whatever, and that did not happen. But my house was always spotless. And they were so jealous of that. I'm like, yeah, but I also, the third thing is like always just to be thought of. It doesn't have to be something big. It could be like he ran into the gas station and said, hey, I bought you this. It does not matter what it is. It's the fact that whenever you're not with me, you're thinking about me. That's how I feel love.
It's okay, you're not there.
No, you do. I think that those two are just so big. It's like I don't need a third one.
No, for sure. No, that's fine.
I'm gonna think of something.
But okay, so that concludes the interview, and I again thank you so much for giving up your time to do it. We really appreciate it, and I hope that everyone got something out of it. I definitely got something out of that, for sure. So we just want to thank you.
And we'll still be here. If you have personal, one-on-one
Yes,
questions,
if
we'll
you
still
have
be
any
here.
que-
You can ask us anything, and we'll answer best we know how.
For sure.
She does. So, Dash was just saying, can you close us out in prayer?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Definitely want to do that. God, we just thank you so much. First of all, that you've created us to be wonderful, just human beings that are loving and that are caring and created for you and for others. And I just ask that, tonight as we've been sharing and kind of telling our story, God, that it's really you that has been speaking and giving insight and thoughts to those that are wanting to grow and wanting to know more about relationships, about marriage. And God, I pray that you would just give wisdom and insight into relationships, that you would help each one of the people here, when whatever stage they are, God, that you would help them to understand your love and also how to love and to be loved, God. It's a huge, huge thing. How to be loved and how to love. That you would help us to be like you, that loves unconditionally, that gives of yourself. God, that we would be giving and caring and love without stipulation. And I just thank you so much for that. I pray that you would just help relationships to be found, that you would help relationships to grow and to be strong. And we just thank you so much for that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Oh yeah, so round of applause. Thank you so much. Again, yeah, they are pastors, so if you want to ask them separately, they are open here.